Starting our first lesson in the Shulchan. We're starting from Siman Aleph, Sif Aleph of our new course. Welcome, everybody. Siman Aleph, the first chapter in Shulchan Aruch, contains, as we said, covering a number of different points relating to waking up, and as I already said in the introduction, we will add to the Shulchan Aruch's words, to his rulings, various different points and cases discussed in the later Achreinim, especially those of the Shulchan Aruch Harav. So let's begin. Sif Aleph. Yisgaber ka'ari lamed baboker lavedas boile. Shehehu ma'ir hashach. One is to strengthen himself like a lion, to stand in the morning and serve his Creator, that he should arouse the morning. I'm going to read the whole Seif, and then we're going to go and break it down. Ramah, the Ramah brings in the name of the Torah that nonetheless one should not delay. In other words, that if you can't wake up that early, then at the very least, wake up on time to go to Shul. Sounds simple. Next point of the Ramah, not related to what the Mechaber here said. Place God in front of you always. This is a great great advantage necessary in studying Torah and in the levels of the righteous. As a person cannot compare the way he acts when he is alone in private to the way he acts when he's in front of a great king. As a person should not feel intimidated by scoffers, that scoffers at his Avodas Hashem. When a person lies in his bed, he should know before who he's lying. As soon as he wakes up, end of the wow, a lot of stuff we just read. Let's break this down. The source material we will be now going through for this halacha is from this book, Writing Like a Jew, one of my first publications, a really good book. And as follows. So the Mechaber and Ramah here jointly discuss a number of issues. Number one, they discuss how a person is to wake up. Number two, when a person is to wake up. Quite a question. Number three, what should motivate a person to wake up? And together with that, we will cover as well different points like how much sleep one should get at night. What does it say in the Svarim? How much sleep should a Jew be getting? 6 hours, 8 hours, 4 hours. What is the halachic recommendation of sleep? As well as we will discuss points regarding how to fulfill the concept that we just read of Shavisi Avayla Negdisam, placing God in front of us always. We will go into the different fundaments. We mentioned this last week in the end of the class. We're going to review it fully today. The 4 different animals that we're meant to emulate, as brings the Torah and the Alter Rebbe and the Madur Basra. We'll discuss Meida Ani in greater detail. And that's the end of Sifat. So let's begin. How to wake up. So the Mechaber here right away begins and tells us that this is our first animal that we emulate. It is the lion, meaning to wake up with a roar, with excitement, with a lot of energy. The Alter Rebbe points out that a person is, we mentioned this last week, a person is not to stand up right away. And the reason for this is, the Alter Rebbe points this out in a few different places, is because a person who does so is closer to death than to life. So it's got to be done slowly. A person slowly makes himself, makes his way in bed and does not stand up suddenly. That is how a person is to wake up. So it's not a good idea to jump out of the sun. We discussed this last week for that reason. When should a person wake up? So if you noticed, the words of the Mechaber was, wake up the morning and don't have the morning wake up you. In fact, that's the conclusion, don't have the morning wake up you, that the Alter Rebbe brings in his Shulchan Aruch when he writes this halacha. What that means is very simply, wake up. So Mechaber here is telling everybody, wake, especially here in Tzfas, don't forget, he's not too far from here. He's telling us, wake up before Aleis HaShachar. You want to follow the later Aleis HaShachar, the Magen Avram, the Seder, no problem. 4:30. Wake up before 4:30 every day. You want to be machmer like the Alter Rebbe's Aleisa Shachar, wake up before 3:30. But wake up at 4:45, 5 o'clock. What is this? Schlafen away? So when I was teaching this, someone asked me, by this very first halacha, he's like, how can you begin Shulchan Aruch with a halacha that nobody keeps?
Nobody's going further. That's it, finished.
If even the first halacha we don't keep, what are we doing here? So the poskim address this issue, and they basically state the following. You see, there has been a change of schedule amongst humans, amongst people. We never used to have lights, and businesses were closed once it became dark. So right now we would already be into our 4th, 5th hour of sleep. So it's no wonder when the Mechaber tells us wake up by 4:30 in the morning. How long can you sleep for already? In the winter. In the summer, okay, maybe it's a little less, but in the winter, you already got a nice schlaf. You already got a nice amount of sleep. But in today's times, the schedule of sleeping has changed. So a lot of the poskim, the Mishnah Shalom, the Pesach Tshuva, the Mishnah Berurah, the Rabbi, the Pri Megadim, all point this out, that likewise this halacha changes. As what's the purpose of the halacha? The point of the halacha is not to say that a person must wake up before the morning. The halacha is that in the normal sleeping schedule of back in the day, now it's time to wake up. Now is the time where it's meant for the world to start working and going to work. Working for God, working for whatever you got to do. However, now that has changed, people go to sleep much later, so obviously the hours of waking up have become delayed to a later point. And therefore, even someone who wants to be very frum, we tell them, says the Pri Megadim, we tell them, don't try to be frum at the expense of your sanity. So don't go to sleep at 12 o'clock and say, it says in Shulchan Aruch, wake up before Alois, he's going to get every night 3 hours of sleep, and in the end he will not manage. We tell him, sleep, continue sleeping as much as you need to be able to function, even if we pass Aleisa Shachar. And this is where the Ramah points out, so long as you're still able to daven properly, so long as you're able to daven with the minyan, so it shouldn't be too late. On this point, it's discussed regarding how much sleep should a person get in night. So the Rambam famously writes 6 hours, 8 hours. So a normal person needs to sleep 1/3 of the day, which is 8 hours. Now, for most people, that sounds like a lot of sleep. 8 hours. When was the last time you got 8 hours of sleep a night? That's a lot of sleep to get. And so there are poskim who, the Magen Avram, when he records this in chapter 238 in Shulchan Aruch, he writes that there is actually no set time. Every person is different. It depends on every person's different physiological states and mental states of how they can function. But as much sleep as you need to function properly, that's how much sleep you have to get every single night. And that's part of Avodas Hashem, getting that amount of sleep and waking up accordingly. The Yavitz in the Siddur of Yaakov Emden writes that for a normal individual, 6 hours of sleep suffices. And it's also brought down that the older you get, the less sleep you need. And confirmations? Yeah. Confirmations. Yeah? Less sleep you need. The older you get, he writes this in the Tiferes Yisrael, Maseches Avos, the more older you get, the less sleep you need. You can sleep 3-4 hours a night and make do. Maybe that's referring to very old. Maybe that's like okay.
For those who are awake sleeping.
Our next point, the motivation to get up in the morning. A lot of people don't get up in the morning because they're just not motivated. If they don't have a boss making them get up, that's why being self-employed is one of the most difficult jobs, because you have to be very self-motivated to get out of bed, do your work. You don't have a boss calling you up and getting around. So someone who doesn't have to wake up for, I'm going to have a boss breathing down his breath, down his neck, what should motivate him? It says the Ramah, we already read inside his words, a person should contemplate God's presence in front of him. This is the Shavisi Hashem Negzamin. A person contemplates Hashem's presence. It shouldn't take too long that you fall asleep from it again, right? So a person obviously has to wake up a little bit. But to the point that a person focuses on what his function is in living, in life, his purpose today, he woke up for another day, and that's how he's able to start his day. We pointed out last week that the Ramah here threw in a word which says, while you are lying on your bed to go to sleep. How did going to sleep enter into this? We're talking about waking up, and we explained As the Ramah here is hinting to, that in order to wake up with this motivation, you got to go to sleep with the motivation. So the Jew has to go to sleep with the proper intents in his mind to be motivated and prepared, ready for when he wakes up. The Baal Shem Tov made a very interesting statement, which is the following regarding this Ramah statement of that you should think of Hashem's presence, and that is as follows: that just like a person's speech is the result of his thought process. For most people, they think before they speak, right? And that's what it's supposed to be. And action is the result of speech and thought. So too, when a person's thought is what affects all of his future speech and action. So he says the following: the first thought a person has in the day, in the very morning when he first wakes up, that is the opening gateway of the rest of that day. So that has an effect on the entire day, to support him for the entire day. And that's why it's important to wake up in a good mood and think of good, positive things in Avodas Hashem. You think of God, and so you start off with Maida'ani, and not to do anything else in between. As this first thought that says the Baal Shem Tov escorts us throughout the whole day. There's a very interesting statement brought in the name of the Arizal in the Ber Hativ. Those, you have it over there in the Ber Hativ. You can see it. Yeah, I'll tell you in a second. Look in the Ber Hativ 2, Sif Beis. He brings there from Shar Ruach HaKodesh the following. It's written in the name of the Arizal that how do you have the Negi Samid? Hashem in front of you always. It's not just in the morning. It says always. He says a person should accustom himself to envision in his mind the letters of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Envision in your thoughts Yud Kei Vav Kei, and he writes that this brings a person great assistance and fear of. And this can be used in many, many different things. If Yud Kei Vav Kei gives a person strength. When I first learned this as a child, I used to use this in fist matches, fist wrestling. And I would armor Yud Kei Vav Kei. Okay, our next points that we're moving on to is we've so far covered the information that we read in the Shulchan Aruch. Again, our 3 points of how to wake up, when to wake up, and what the motivation. And now we're going to do some additions that are brought down in other achronim, including the Alter Rebbe. So the 4 animals that we're meant to emulate. If you notice, the Mechaber Ramah mentioned 2 of them. The Mechaber says, wake up like a lion. That is also brought in the other Paiskim, and there the Alter Rebbe explains that the Avodah of Gibor Kari is not just waking up in the morning, but in general to overcome the evil inclination that requires a strong, mighty warrior like a lion to overcome the Yitzhak. A second animal that the Ramah hinted to, anyone see what it was hinting to? It was the leopard. Az Keneba, right? It says, be as brazen as a leopard. The Ramah wrote that if people intimidate you and scoff at you in Avodas Hashem, do not be embarrassed, do not be intimidated, and you continue your divine service. The Rebbe pointed out that the reason why the Shulchan Aruch begins with this is because, especially in today's generation, this is one of the main fundaments of divine service that a person has to know. As person even when we measure religious Jews versus Gentiles, religious Jews versus other sects of religious Jews, there is so much scoffing and intimidation all over the place that we go. And so this is the beginning of Avodah, that a person does not become intimidated and doesn't take it to heart and continues his Avodah. And this is what the Alter Rebbe explains in the Maimer, that when Moshe Rabbeinu was taken to the mountain, Har Nevoy, it says in the end of Dvarim, to see everything that will occur in Eretz Yisrael till the end of days, he was shamed by the Avodah of the last generation before the coming of the Messiah. What was he shamed about? Not because they were such great tzaddikim, much greater than him, but because despite their very low level and despite the concealment of godliness that we live in, they were still keeping Torah and mitzvahs, and they were still fighting in face of all of this intimidation. And by that, he himself was put to shame. He was embarrassed, saying, wow, look how strong these people are. I have not even reached that stage. So this was the humility that Moshe felt towards us. And this is something the Rebbe pointed out, that in Ikvus of the Mashiach, in the last generation, even though when we compare, we're obviously much lower, but our service is fulfilling something very high that was not fulfilled in previous generations. The Alter Rebbe here brings in his Shulchan Aruch and Madura Basra that if a person does scoff at you, there's two ways to react. Either scoff at him back or ignore him. He says ignore him. Don't answer back in a way that could be considered brazen. Why? Because he says even though this guy deserves a brazen reply, once a person begins acting brazenly, it's very difficult to put a noose on that horse. And that may continue everywhere else as well. We see this very often. Someone gets into an argument or a disturbing fight with someone at work, suddenly that argument continues at home with someone in the family. In other words, once a person gets worked up, it's kind of hard to control this. So he says, therefore, by the scoffers, a person should just ignore them. He doesn't have to pay attention to them and answer back. As light as an eagle, we discussed last week that this deals with Shmir Sinai. I'm going to discuss this today now in greater depth. The Torah writes that the animal that we're emulating of an eagle, what are we emulating? It's the idea of to be able to close our eyes in the face of evil, not to look at evil. And this already touches upon one of also the fundamentals of Avodas Hashem, which is Shmir Sinai. A lot of people ask, how important is Shmir Sinai for a person to guard his eyes? How important is it? Is it something that we really work on, or is it maybe something only for the frummies, for the very frummies? How important is it? You know, some people think because maybe we don't talk about it so much, therefore it's not something of that great importance. So first of all, in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, that is one of the first halachas. It describes the four animals we have to emulate as brought in Pirkei Avos, which one of them is the eagle. And it's written in the Shulchan Aruch and Even Ezra. We'll get to it eventually in Siman Chof Aleph. Mechaber writes that it is a biblical prohibition for a man to look at any part of a woman for the purpose of pleasure. It's a biblical prohibition. Isser min HaTorah. It's considered part of the Isser of Arayis, of Leisikrubu. The same way the Torah has the list of prohibitions of forbidden relations, so too it's forbidden to have any contact of closeness, of pleasure with those forbidden relations, which could even be contact that is where you're not talking to each other. You haven't even acknowledged each other's existence, but a person is looking. Just a look, a stare, can be a transgression. The Mefarshim do explain that this doesn't mean that a slight glance is an isser, which would mean that a person would be walking outside of his house today or doing anything because, maybe in the winter, maybe today was a little different, but any other day, there's arayis with an ayin, which can become arayis with an aleph, if you know what I mean. So there's all these things around. So a person can't go out of his house. So it's explained that, what it means is that a person is allowed to function and go about his daily business, and he has to try to avoid. When it's a person that continues to look, that's when there is a biblical prohibition involved. For a person to continue to look for the sake of pleasure. The Rebbe Rashab in Kuntras Eitz Chaim has a section in the discourse there where he says that he explains a Pi Kabbalah and Chassidus the sense of sight and how deep it is embedded in the soul of a person. And that even when we see something nonchalantly, and we don't get aroused, right now we don't have any emotions or feelings due to this sight. Sight is so deep in the soul that it can erupt many years later and cause one to sin. And that's why he writes to the person that sight is one of the greatest pleasures is found in sight, to the point that we know it says that in the generation of the Midbar, when they were fed the man, it was considered an oppression. Why? They were getting the best of food, steaks, ice cream, whatever you wanted. The reason is because they couldn't see their food. If you went to a restaurant, got delicious food, but it was one big glob, you ever go back there? You didn't see what you were eating. So this, the Rebbe Shab explains that there's a certain pleasure found in sight that is very deep into the soul, and therefore this halacha that we said of being like an eagle and controlling the sight is of the utmost importance due to this reason. We're going to read a translated letter of the Rebbe on this issue, where someone basically wrote to the Rebbe, in Chassidus I don't see too much talk about the concept of Shmiras Einayim, maybe it's not that important. So the Rebbe answered him like this. In answer to your question regarding the matter of Shmiras Einayim, this is a letter printed in Igros Kodesh, volume 19, page 344. It is understood that there is no place to write this in letters besides for the fact that there is no need to do so, being that the matter is explained in the teachings of Chassidus. In general, the importance of it can be understood from the saying of the sages that a blind man is considered like he is dead, and hence staring at a forbidden matter, which is contrary to the purpose of existence of the eyes, is considered a temporary blindness. Heaven save us, and even worse so. It is not necessary to lengthen on such an obvious manner. So this is obviously something of great importance, and this is already the part of the four fundamental principles of Avodas Hashem. Our last one is be as swift as a deer, which is to walk quickly towards mitzvah. So let's summarize these points. The Shulchan Aruch of the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch of the Alter Rebbe both begin with four principles of service of God that a person is to embed within his life, and the Mechaber remembering two of them, and that is to, number one, be as strong as a lion to overcome the Yetzer Hara. Number two, to emulate the eagle by closing the eyes in the face of evil due to its great detriment. Number three, to be like as brazen as a leopard when necessary and not get intimidated by scoffers of Avodas Hashem. And number four is to be quick to do mitzvahs. We're moving on now to another concept which we started last week, and that is regarding Moedeh Ani. We already explained last week that Moedeh Ani is not written in the Shulchan Aruch. Don't bother looking for it, it's not here. You can look for it anyways, but it's not there. It does not mention in the Shulchan Aruch. Our first source of Moedeh Ani is written, we said in the Seder Hayom, it was written by Rabbi Moshe Makir in the 1600s here in this very city that we are in. He's buried not too far from here. And so, as we mentioned last week, this is, by the way, this is the Sefer. You want to see? This is what it looks like. The first source of Moedeh Ani. It says, we're going to go through the following details regarding Moedeh Ani, which we did not cover last week. Why is it said? What's the reason that it's said that it was suddenly innovated? How is it to be said? Both in what position of the hands, the body, as well as how are the words to be recited. So let's begin. Prior to the time of Rabbi Moshe Makir of the Seder Hayom writing about Moedeh Ani, it was not the custom to say Moedeh Ani. That's why he wrote about it. It was not customary. It wasn't done. It was innovated by either him or someone close to his generation. What did they do until then? So, there is an obligation for a Jew to thank Hashem throughout his life whenever he receives benefit of something. Before we eat, before we drink, we say a bracha. After we finish eating and drinking, we say a bracha. We see something beautiful, we see a rainbow, we say a bracha. We put on clothing in the morning, we say Mal B'Sharum, and we say a bracha. Everything a Jew does, we bless God and remind ourselves of God, that He is the one who allowed this to occur, and we thank Him for that capability of us being able to have this. Obviously, waking up is the greatest pleasure a person can benefit from. There are even bumper stickers that say, "What are you so angry about? Be happy that you woke up this morning." Never see those? It's in Hebrew, it's better. We have a Hebrew slogan. You know, a lot of Israelis that come to work very grouchy. What are you? Be happy you're up, you're awake, you're living. You know, He owes you nothing. You're breathing. You're alive. That's the greatest pleasure a person can get. How can it be that we will not bless Hashem for that? So you'll answer, of course you bless Hashem. That's what Lekai Neshama is all about. Problem. Lekai Neshama is said very late into the day, meaning much later than the time you woke up. This is a benefit I got this moment. I just woke up. So in order to be able to thank Hashem for the benefit of waking up, immediately upon awakening, the custom became to say Moedeh Ani. Now why not just say Lekai Neshama? But just say Elokai Neshama as soon as you wake up. Why Moed Ani? So in truth, that's what it used to be. It used to be, as it's brought from the Gemara, that they used to say Elokai Neshama when they would first wake up. That's in Talmudic times.
Before washing hands?
Before washing hands, correct. And the reason is as follows. We're going to learn in chapter 4, with a while till we get there, the 4th chapter of the Shulchan Aruch, of the mitzvah or an obligation of washing hands in the morning partially due to a very evil spirit that resides on the hands called Bas Melech. That's its klipa name, Bas Melech. And there's a difference between the Talmud and the Zayar and how to view this spirit of impurity and how severe it is. The Talmud takes an approach that it's pretty bad. You got to wash your hands, and there's certain things you can't do till you wash your hands. But it's not bad to the point that you can't even say words of Torah or say a bracha of Hashem's name. And therefore, according to Talmudic law, as we'll learn in that section, it is permitted for a person who slept with pajamas, so he didn't touch any areas of his body that are normally covered, to, as soon as he wakes up, to say Elokai Neshama with Hashem's name. But according to the Zohar, it's absolutely forbidden because the impurity is very strong, very intense. We all today follow the Zohar, and therefore we do not say any brachas or learn Torah till we wash hands. Being that that's the case, we can't say Elokai Neshama right away when we wake up. So instead, we have to say Moed Ani, which does not contain any names of Hashem. That is the first reason of why it is said. Another reason suggested is we already read before in the Ramah, a person has to think of Hashem as soon as he wakes up, so it motivates him. And Moed Ani, saying the verse of the pasuk, it's not a pasuk, but saying the sentence of Moed Ani helps a person right away think about God. The position that it's meant to be said in. So the Alter Rebbe writes as follows in the Madura Basra, chapter 1, halacha 6. A person should say it while sitting or lying in bed. We don't stand up to say. We don't put our feet on the ground. This we'll explain later on when we get to the laws of washing, that there's a Messiah that we have from Reb Zusha of Ani Paili. Look at that. We have a tradition from Reb Zusha that we don't place our feet on the ground before washing hands. According to the Zohar, even according to the Zohar, you have up to 4 amos of walking. And you have a little bit of space to walk. But according to Zusha, you don't even put your feet on the ground. So therefore, we say it sitting on our bed or lying on our bed. The Chiddush, I think, here more is that you can say it even in a lying position, after the rights. You don't actually have to sit. But nonetheless, we don't stand, we don't put our feet on the ground. The Chabad Minhag, which is recorded in the Kutei Diburim and Sefer HaSichos, and is actually to have been a very old Jewish custom from thousands of years ago. The Rebbe Shab said that this was a custom that was done by Avraham Avinu, Yitzchak Avinu, is to, in the position of the hands, the same way the Ani is to put the 2 hands together and say. Now there's different versions of how it's done. Some people do like this, some people do like this. The Rebbe Rayat, the way he showed to do it is like this, the same way the Ani in the morning when you wake up. And this is what many Chassidim do. We say it in this manner.
Was Akkada originated in the 16th century?
Correct. So obviously it's not referring to the words Moed Ani, but whatever it is that they would think or say as soon as they woke up to remind themselves of Hashem, is that the halacha of Shvis and Negdi Summit, I'm sure they fulfilled as well. That wasn't innovated by the Ramah, so they did it in that position. It's a good question, but that's the understanding, at least, that I would have in the source of what its intent is. When we say Moed Ani, you have to make a punctuation in the correct place in order so the sentence makes sense, and that is to place a nekuda between Bechemla and Rabbi Munasach. A lot of people just say Moed Ani, Bechemla Rabbi, and then they end up in Munasach. Bechemla Rabbi is not the phrase. It's Bechemla with mercy, and then there's a comma, and then Rabbi Munasach will say, how great is your faith, how great is your trust that you return to us also. So Rabbi is part of the Munasach and not part of the previous word. This is recorded in the Shari Tshuva. That's something that a lot of people aren't careful in, that a person should be careful with. Regarding woman, should a woman say Moed Ani or Moeda Ani? Should they say it in a masculine way or in a feminine way? So when the Rebbe was addressed this question, he said that everyone should follow the community custom. There's room for both. There's room for a woman to say moidah. There's room for a woman to say moidah. Everyone should follow the community custom. We know Shulchan Aruch says that from what he knows, women are accustomed to say moidah, for comments, and not like men as moidah. But as we said, each to their own. There's no wrong or one right way about this.
Is there a community minhagim Lubavitch?
No, when the Rebbe would have said if there was. When the Rebbe was asked, he said, follow minhag makom.
He didn't say what the minimum makom was.
Obviously, there is no minhag. So let's clarify an important thing. When we're dealing with minhagi Chabad are only those minhagim that were delivered by to the Chassidim by the Rabbi. That the Rebbe Seder Nesiyenu, the Chabad Rebbeim, taught it to the Chassidim. That is Chabad minhag. If it's a minhag that was done in the city of Lubavitch, because that's the minhag of the city. Lubavitch was around since the 1500s. That doesn't make it a Chabad minhag. It means it's a Lubavitch minhag. It's a minhag of the city of Lubavitch. And so to and so, necessarily Chabad or not Chabad minhag. It all depends on the community. And we can have that as well within Chabad as well, that some do it one way and some do it another way. And that's in essence what the Rebbe here is answering, is that every community follows their minhag.
Women say modah, I didn't hear.
We concluded that as the Rebbe says, is that it's depending on the community custom, each to their own.
So, meaning?
Some families have a custom saying modah.
It's a question of family.
Some say modah.
The community.
Shlomo Zalman said you say modah.
Who?
Shlomo Zalman Aruch. You say modah. Okay. The last halacha here in this first halacha of Sif Aleph, the Alter Rebbe points out in Sif Zayin that two different points of waking up. That number one, he writes that every person should be meticulous to wash his hands as soon as he wakes up after saying Maida'ani, not to delay, as continuing to lie in bed with those impure hands is a bad omen for nocturnal emission, or Zerlevato. To prevent that, he says a person should wash his hands right away. Number two, he writes that even after a person washes his hands, he should not remain in bed, even if he's going to be thinking words of Torah in bed. It's not a proper place to do your Avodas Hashem, he writes. A person should get up and start his day. As the verse says, Hochin likas Hashem aleikecha, prepare yourself before God. So 2 points. Point number one is that a person should wash right away, not delay the washing once he's awake. And number two, once he's washed, get out of bed, not to stay in bed.
But that's if he's gotten his night's sleep. And he wakes up
Correct.
4 hours before that.
So that's right, exactly. So that's the thing. Either go back to sleep or get up. But don't lie there and try to figure out your whole day or think of something and learn and say, I'm going to learn in bed for half an hour. I want to relax a little bit. I just woke up. That's what he's coming to negate. The person should not do that. The person should either get up. You need more sleep, go back to sleep. Okay. The next halacha in the Mechaber, which we're going to read, is halachas 2 through 4, deals with tikkun chatzos. And we're not going to go through all the details here because, as we know, we don't exactly do tikkun chatzos anymore. What we will go into is some interesting facts regarding the time of tikkun chatzos, how it was done, just to know, and more importantly for us, why we no longer do it today, or do we do it today in some other form? And if we do, what is that other form? In other words, is there anything we have to know today about tikkun chatzos? So let's begin. We're in Sif Beis. Hamashkim le'ischanan lefnei bayir, one who wakes up to give supplication before his Creator, Yechavim l'shoish and mishtanis. He should wake up for what we're calling tikkun chatzos at the times that the mishmar is switched, that the guards switch, which is That the third of the night, it was safe Shnei Shlishi Alayim, at the end of the 2/3 of the night, it was safe Alayim at the end of the night, Shetfilah Shispavus and Ashais and the Churban Alagol Shetzura. As the prayer that a person downs at that time under destruction of the temple or exile is accepted above. I will explain what I just read after we finish all three. It is proper for every God-fearing individual to be pained and worried over the destruction of the temple. And it is better that a person say a little amount of supplication with great concentration than to say a lot with very little concentration. Okay, so let's break down what we just read. So, famously, we've heard of the concept called Tikkun Chatzais. But, in truth, the concept of Tikkun Chatzais, emphasizing Chatzais, was not known in the times of the Talmud or even in the times that the Mechaber wrote a Shulchan Aruch. The idea of waking up and saying a supplication and bemoaning the destruction, as we know is done in Tikkun Chatzais, was not known that it's meant to be done by Chatzais by midnight. The auspicious time of midnight was something revealed to us only later on by the Zohar, and word of it had not yet reached the Mechaber when he wrote a Shulchan Aruch. And therefore he makes no mention of it. And he writes that the best time, the most auspicious time, according to the Talmud, to do Tikkun Chatzais, is at the end of each third of the night. The night is split up to 3 Nishmayos, as the Gemara in Brachos says, 3 periods. So you have the end of the first period, the end of the second period, the end of the third period, which is the end of the night. So he says that any one of those ends, first, second, or third, is an auspicious time above for to do Tikkun Chatzais, to do the Tikkun, to do the supplication. And the Alter Rebbe in his Madura Kamas first verse Shulchan Aruch also records it this way. Over the second version, that's when he records the concept of actual midnight. As I said, that was innovated later on, like was in a siddur. And from that period and onwards, from Arizal and onwards, when it became revealed the greatness of Chatzais, did it change from being Tikkun Mishmayros to Tikkun Chatzais. So that's our first interesting fact of the greatness of Chatzais, that it's only recent, quite recent, the past few hundred years, that we know about it. So what's with the history of Tikkun Chatzais? So it used to be that all Jews used to say, everybody, whether it be simple Jews, Talmidei Chachamim, everybody used to wake up. It was part of the Jewish schedule, just like you wake up in the morning, say Meida'ani, you wake up at night and you say Tikkun Chatzais. By Chatzais, or later on by the Ashmuros, this was done by even simple individuals. The Alter Rebbe writes in a letter, it's written that there were groups of Chabad Chassidim in his time that would gather together in Shul for Tikkun Chatzais every single evening. It's like what the Sephardim do during Elul by Slichas. You see, they get up early by Chatzais, a lot of them, some of them later, but a lot of them by Chatzais, and they do Slichas. So we would do this every day. This was something that was done every single day. And as the generations passed, the Tikkun Chatzais custom began to decrease more and more and more. In the times of the Mittler Rebbe and Tzemach Tzedek,
practically, how would they wake up?
How would they wake up?
Yeah.
The rooster. Or the shamash.
Chatzot?
Yeah.
Shamash, but Shamash have to wake up.
They would have someone wake them up, or a rooster, or
nowadays we have alarm clocks.
Or the animal rooster, or the human rooster. They would have someone come and do it. There would be someone in charge of doing it. Yeah, sure.
Every communities? Every communities they do it? All the communities?
Yeah. So it goes as follows. So that it was in the Alter Rebbe's times that everybody used to do it. That's what's written. And then past the Alter Rebbe, then a little more as the generations passed, people stopped coming to Shul to do it. They started doing it at home. This is the history of the abolishing of the Jewish custom. They stopped doing it in Shul. They started doing it at home. Then it went to being that not the simple Jews don't do it anymore, only the more sophisticated, the more advanced. And then it went to being that even the advanced don't do it anymore, and practically nobody does anymore Tikkun Chatzais. This is practically the custom today. Maybe if you have a few Yechidei Segula that still do it, but for the most part, amongst all sects of Jewry, it is not done. What's the reason why? So the Eshel Avraham Butchach, he as well acknowledged this phenomena, and he writes that once again, the sleeping schedule blame it again on the sleeping schedule. Back then, they went to sleep at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the winter when it got dark early, and they would wake up with the full, breath of energy to be able to start their day, taking chatzos. But today, that things have changed so much, we're unable to do this. However, this doesn't really answer the question so much because do tikkun chatzos before you go to sleep. No problem. You go to sleep late. So do tikkun chatzos before you go to sleep. So in truth, our tradition is that Kriyash Mashalamita that we do today is in place of tikkun chatzos. It's the same cheshbon nefesh of tikkun chatzos. We're supposed to do an accounting of the soul by Kriyash Mashalamita. And therefore, the Rebbe actually writes that if a person is already near chatzos, Hashem Kriyash Mashalamita, he should push it off till chatzos, do a few more minutes, push it till chatzos will be exactly by chatzos that the person does it. And he should have in mind that what he's doing is cheshbon nefesh is in place of tikkun chatzos, the original tikkun chatzos. There is a tradition of the Baal Shem Tov, it's a tradition Baal Pet, that the Baal Shem Tov is the one who nullified tikkun chatzos. He was mataken, he fixed the night, then the night no longer needs tikkun chatzos. We don't know if this is verified or not verified, this tradition, but there is such a tradition recorded, and one thing's for certain, we do know that people do it for the most part, don't do it anymore.
In Sabbat Rivash, Baal Shem Tov said that anyone who does Tikkun Chatzot should have a nap in the day.
In the day.
Yeah.
And does that mean that if you don't do Tikkun Chatzot, you can't take a nap during the day?
That's something else. And now the question.
Our last point here that we mentioned in the Mechaber was it's better to say a little bit with a lot of kavanah than to say a lot with a little bit of kavanah. This is a halacha also recorded in the Alter Rebbe regarding all slichas. The main part of slichas, whether it be in Elul or Seres Mitzvah or on a fast day, is not the amount of words the person was able to say, but the amount of concentration and intent. And therefore, even if you won't be able to say the whole thing, but a little bit he says, you will know what he was saying. That is better than saying the entire thing. Our next group of halachas deals with karbanos. This is from halacha Hey, Sif Hey, till Sif Tes. Actually,
Akkada.
yeah, we're going to read it inside, and this is no longer in this book. This doesn't take care of karbanos. Different file on that. Okay, let's read first the halachas inside, and I'll just give a little intro. What we're basically going to discuss here in these few seifim is we're going to discuss what paragraphs are said in Karbanos, what do we say today, and what was originally written in the Shulchan Aruch to say. We're going to go through Parashas Haman, Aseres HaDibros, the Parashas Shiur. We'll discuss also about Matoivu, Yigdal, what is the prayer of Yigdal, how it's meant to be said, and some other interesting points regarding the Kabbalah. So let's begin. We are in Sifhei. Siman Aleph Sifhei. Toiv Leimer Parshas HaAkedu, Parshas Haman, Vaseres HaDibros, Uparshas Oilo, Umincha, Shlam, Mechatos V'Ashem. It is proper for a person to recite the paragraph dealing with the Akkada, right, the sacrifice of Yitzchak, the paragraph dealing with the Man, the 10 Commandments, and the paragraph of the Torah dealing with the Oila, Mincha, Shlam, Chatas, and Hashem sacrifices. Says the Ramah, V'dafka b'yachid, Mutalei Maseres HaDibros Chayim, only an individual may say the 10 Commandments each day, but a congregation may not do so. We're going to explain that, don't worry. Sivav. Parshas Karbanos Emel B'yayim, the Karbanos should only be said during the daytime. Sif Zayin, Kseisan, Parshas Ha'oila Yemer, when a person concludes reading the portion of the Oila sacrifice, he should say, Hiratz Mefanecha, Shiazeh Chashuv, Ki Umekubel Kilu Hikrafti Oila, may it be your will, God, that this be considered as if I have sacrificed an Oila. V'kach Yema Achar Parshas HaMincha V'Shlamim Peshin B'Yim Nadav, and so he should say, after the Mincha and Shlamim sacrifice, the same Hiratz. When the person is done saying their kabbalah, he should say this verse, which we do say, it's part of our Siddur, we say it every morning, and he slaughtered the animal on the foot of the altar in the north in front of God. Siftes, Yesh Nangel in Parshas Kiyur. Some are accustomed to say the paragraph of the Kiyur, the Achkaf Parshas Trumas Hadesh, and they then say the portion dealing with the removal of the ash. Achkaf Parshas Tamid, Achkaf Parshas Bechak Miktaktos, Parshas Menaktos. Okay. So we had here basically a list of the Mechaber throughout the Sifim, giving us a list of things that one should say, it's proper to say, and how it should be said. So let's first deal with our first point. What should a person say? So we had here a long list, and let's go through if we actually do this, and if not, why not? The Akkada. The first one is the Akkada, and we know that the Akkada is something we do say every morning. It's printed in all the Siddurim, Ashkenaz, Sfard, Nusach HaRizal. Does anyone know any Siddurim it's not printed in? Right, the Akkada is unanimously printed in all the Siddurim. So that made it in. Why do we say the Akkada? What's the importance? The Alter Rebbe records in the Shulchan Aruch, again in chapter 1, this is all from chapter 1, Simon Aleph, in Sif Tes, in Sif Yud and Tes, and Medur Kamen Basra, that the reason why we say it is for two reasons. Reason one is to remind Hashem of the merits of our forefathers. Get some brownie points, right? Get in good with Hashem in the morning. Start off our day with favoritism. But number two, it's not just for God to give us something, but it's for us to look at Yitzchak and see, wow, look what he gave up for Hashem. He was willing to get himself slaughtered. Certainly, I can slaughter my Yetzer Hara for a little thing, a little less than that, than Yitzchak. So it's to learn from Yitzchak's example. So it's to remind Hashem of the great sacrifice that our forefathers had to give us merit, and as well to help motivate us in overcome our own Yetzer Hara and challenges. This is why it is said, the minhag is that we say it also on Shabbos, even though there are those who are accustomed not to say it, not to mention this on Shabbos. Nonetheless, according to the Alter Rebbe and the Siddur, we don't skip Parshas HaKedah on Shabbos. The next paragraph that was listed to say is the Parshas Haman. Not Haman from the story of Esther, but the man that would fall in the desert. Now, does anyone say that today?
Not me.
From my slight scan through different Siddurim of different Uschais, I haven't found it printed in any Siddurim. Aruch and Shulchan Aruch. What's going on? So first let's discuss why it's proper to be said. So the Alter Rebbe goes into a little greater detail and says that the reason why the Mechaber rules it's proper for one to say the paragraph of the man is in order to strengthen one's bitachon in Hashem. That Hashem provides one food on a daily basis in order to strengthen that bitachon in Him, so therefore we say it every single day. And a second point the Alter Rebbe points out, it's also to tell us that, hey, relax, don't overwork yourself to try to make ends meet. Because remember what happened by the man? Remember those guys who were a little lazy, didn't bring so much home? What happened when they came home? Miraculously, they saw the same amount as everyone else. And what about those guys who overworked and they got themselves 5 meals worth instead of 1 meal's worth? They came home, what did they see? Only 1 meal's worth. In other words, that the Alter Rebbe is saying that every Jew will get what he needs to get based on his allotment from above. Of course, he has to put an effort, but it's based on his allotment from above, and therefore a person should not overwork himself in the way that will sabotage his avodas Hashem for the sake of making parnasa, as his parnasa will be received regardless. So why don't we say it? It's such a beautiful reason and so important. If we actually said this in the morning, maybe we would take more time to daven properly and not worry so much about parnasa. So the reason brought down is based on the Arizal. The Arizal is the one who nullified this, and it's brought in a number of Sifrei Kabbalah, based, as I said before, on the Arizal and Shara Akdamis and the Maran recanting Tamei HaMitzvos, that we don't say because it's not proper for a person to even begin discussion of his parnasa before he davens to Hashem. First daven. First a person davens, then he can start thinking on others. To even start thinking about it, even about bitachon, is already wrong. But nonetheless, because it is written in the Shulchan Aruch, you have many Yidden who are accustomed every single day to say Parshas Haman after davening. This is not the Chabad custom, as the Alter Rebbe did not print this paragraph in the Siddur at all. Now, as the Rebbe points out in the letter, this doesn't mean that, according to our custom, it's forbidden for us to ever say Parshas Haman. That's not what it means. It just means it's not part of the set dialect, the nusach of the siddur that every Jew is to say every single day. But if a person wants to be inspired, and wants to get the great school of Parshas Zaman, there's absolutely nothing wrong with him saying it. We just don't say it before davening. A person would say it after davening. But you have Yidden who actually do say it every single day. And now we have a very peculiar subject, which is next on that and what we read, and that is regarding the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments, the most precious part of the Torah ceremony, right? So we read, it's proper to say it every single day, the 10 Commandments. Do we do that? No. It is not in the Siddur. It's not in any of the Siddurim that I have seen. And people do not say it. Why? First, let's go into why it was said. Okay? The reason the Alter brings down it was said is in order to remind us every single day of the giving of the Torah in Har Sinai and to strengthen our Emunah in the giving of the Torah. Now, it's recorded in the Gemara, and the Alter Rebbe records this, all these details in the Madura Kama in chapter 1, Halacha 10, that initially the sages wanted to place the 10 Commandments to be recited during Kriya Shema. During Kriya Shema. They wanted to make a part of the Nusach of Kriya Shema. However, they backtracked and they didn't do so. Why? Why did they refuse to do so? Because of the minim of the heretics. What does this mean? They thought the following: if we start making such a highlight of the 10 Commandments, what are people going to, some people with heretical minds going to start thinking, this is the main Torah. The 10 Commandments, that's it, nothing more. That's it, all I need to do is 10 Commandments and I'm a good Jew. Don't steal, don't murder, believe in God, and you're good to go. And this was a very serious worry, that people would start chopping away from the Torah. And therefore, they didn't want to emphasize one part over another. And so therefore, they number one, did not put it into Kriya Shema. Number two, this answers that peculiar halacha we read in the Mechaber. It's in the Ramasari that it's forbidden to say it with the congregation. We specifically don't want to make a big deal about it. We don't want to make a shtur. We don't want to make a lot of noise about the 10 Commandments, because of people that they may mistakenly think that only this is the main part of the Torah. And therefore, the Ramah rules, and this is the halacha, that even those who do say it would have to say it privately, not as a community together. Practically, it is not recorded in the Siddurim, and we don't say the 10 Commandments at all.
It's in my siddur after the davening.
After the davening, similar to the Aman, is not a problem. Correct, right. But before the davening, we don't say it as part of the Seder Tefillah. We don't say the part of the Seder Tefillah because of this reason. Now, Rebbe Siddur doesn't record it at all.
So when it's in Kriyas Torah, there's a question, do you stand there?
Exactly, very good. I was going to point that out. The machlekes regarding whether you should stand when you read a Seres HaDibros in Shul is exactly because of this reason. Some say you should stand because Seres HaDibros. Some say you shouldn't stand because if you emphasize any change by Seres HaDibros, the meaning will say only a Seres HaDibros you have to really keep. Everything else is just the extra points. So to negate this, the Rambam and others wrote that you shouldn't stand for a Seres HaDibros. You should sit.
The Rebbe said,
just like the rest of Kriyas Torah.
The Rebbe said we should stand and look at the Sefer Torah.
Bad custom is that we do stand. I'm just
and
explaining.
not only that, but look.
Correct. I'm explaining the reason behind the conflict of the machlekes, if you should stand or not stand, is because of this issue. We're going to conclude with one more thing. We'll continue next week regarding the parsha of the Shiur, which we also just read before inside. It should be said. Practically, many Siddurim do bring this down. The parsha of reading about the basin that was used for washing. It's a Nusach Ashkenaz, I believe also Nusach Sfarad. Nusach Harizah, the Alter Rebbe does not bring it, so it's Chabad Chassidim, we do not say it, but many Yidden do say it till today, as recorded in the Shulchan Aruch, including the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, to say the Shiur. Next week we will continue discussing the other paragraphs, and are they said, are they not said, and why not?
Rabbi, what did you say? What did you say we're supposed to do with the Seres HaDibros?
In practicality, based on Alter Rebbe, we don't say it. A person wants to, they could.
No, it's standing.
Chabad custom is to stand, and so is also the widespread Sephardi custom. But there are Svardim who don't stand based on the ruling of the Rabbi.
So is it standing just for that little section
Yeah,
or standing
yeah,
for the
yeah.
whole aliyah?
Oh, you're asking, should you stand for the whole Kriyas Torah?
That
The
aliyah?
aliyah
No.
itself.
You can sit during the aliyah. You stand, the minig is to stand for the Aseres Libus, but the aliyah ends not too far from the end of the Aseres Libus, so you don't have that much time.
Scrap.